Hi, I'm Dr. Thomas Armstrong, and I'm doing a series of videos to promote my new book, The Power of Neurodiversity: Unleashing the Advantages of Your Neurodivergent Brain. This is a completely revised and updated version of a book I did with the same title in 2010. The title of this video is The Culture of Flowers. I want you to imagine that you wake up one morning and you find that everybody around you, in fact, the whole culture, has been turned into flowers. Some of you are petunias, some of us are begonias, some of us are tulips. And I want you to imagine that in this culture of flowers, the psychiatrists are the roses. I'd like to take you through a day in the life of a rose psychiatrist as she sees her different clients. The first client is a calla lily, and the rose psychiatrist goes to work measuring the circumference of the white spathe, the diameter of a yellow spadix, the length of the green stem. She has a chlorophyll biopsy taken and sent to the lab. She administers the RNRSF, the Rose Normality Rating Scale for flowers, which asks, among other things, have you ever caused bloating or diarrhea to an animal that's taken a bite out of you? Anyway, she does all these assessments, and then a couple of days later, the client comes back and she says, well, I have good news and bad news. The bad news first is that you have pedal deficit disorder. We're not sure what causes it. We think it's a genetic condition. But the good news is that a local herbicide representative came by and dropped off a supply of Pedalin, which is a drug that you can take that will enable you to live a successful and productive life in a bed of sandy loam somewhere. Well, the calla lily took in this knowledge and went off to live a new life as a disordered flower. The client or the psychiatrist had several other clients that came in during the day, patients, and she came up with different diagnoses for all of them. A sunflower came in and was diagnosed with hugeism. A bluet came in and was diagnosed with a growing disability. A camellia was diagnosed with olfactory deficiency syndrome. A cactus was diagnosed with antisocial behavior. A poppy was diagnosed with dyslephia. And in each of these cases, each of these flowers was seen as disordered, as diagnosed with a disability because it did not meet the standard of the rose psychiatrist. But the fact is, this seems like a kind of a ridiculous story because we, in fact, like diversity in flowers. The calla lily gives us a certain uniqueness compared with the petunia and the begonia and even the cactus. We appreciate and celebrate those diversities. We also celebrate diversity in animals and diversity in cultures as well. But when it comes to diversity in brains, it seems that we fall back on these old, tired paradigms based on disability, dysfunction, and disadvantage. The Rose psychiatrist uses her diagnostic and statistical manual, and you can see how the different versions of this manual got bigger and bigger with each new version. The number of disabilities has tripled in the last 50 years. Now you might say, well, we do need standards to look at, what's wrong with people. And I would say, well, standards can come in handy for certain things. And for example, up till just a few years ago, if you went to a building in Paris, France, out in the suburbs, you'd find under a couple of bell jars a piece of metal which was exactly 1 kilogram. This was a way of their standardizing the kilogram, and everybody around the world brought their own kilograms to Paris to have them calibrated against this basic standard. They don't do this now. They use more of an atomic method. But so there are standards for certain things. But regardless of where you look, there's no brain stuck in a vat somewhere or under a bell jar in a museum or wherever that represents the normal or standard brain. And if there is no normal or standard brain, then how can we tell what an abnormal brain is? Who can determine what an abnormal brain is if we have no normal brain to compare it with? This realization made me think more deeply about diversity, how we have biodiversity, we have cultural diversity, and what we need is neurodiversity to go along with those. It was about 17 years ago or so that I was cruising on the internet and I came to neurodiversity.com. This doesn't exist anymore. It's now archived as neurodiversity.net. But I was amazed at what I saw. I saw pictures of Andy Warhol and Glenn Gould and some other people I didn't recognize. But the caption underneath really blew my mind, honoring the varieties of human wiring. And suddenly it seemed to me that we had a whole fruitful new term, neurodiversity, to describe the diversity in brains, the diversity in ways in which people's brains are wired. And it's this idea of neurodiversity that I think really is timely in terms of, among other things, political issues. There are people in the government who don't like the word diversity. So my response to them is, here's another diversity for you to not like. But most of us recognize the value of diversity. We realize that with neurodiversity, we have access to all kinds of different brains that think differently, that attend differently, that socialize differently. And these differences make our culture richer rather than poorer. So again, if you want to hear the story, it's in my book. It begins my book, The Power of Neurodiversity. So I hope you get the book and share it with your friends and relatives and others. If you go to my website, which is www.institute4learning.com, that's institute4learning.com, you can sign up for my blog posts. And if you do, you'll get a 200-item neurodiversity strengths checklist, which is also from my book, that'll enable you or anyone to walk away from an assessment with a rich collection of things that you're good at. And this is particularly important for people who are neurodivergent because so many of them have just been surrounded by people who see the worst in them, who pummel them with negatives, and it's about time that we focused on the strengths and the positives. Anyway, thank you for listening and watching my video, and there'll be other videos. Look for them. I'll put them on YouTube as a series so you can go through them one by one. I appreciate it and wish you a wonderful day and good health.